Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure. This past weekend was the garage sale at Stormville, and you guys know I love my flea markets, and that one is relatively local to me, you know, within a half hour of my house. So I wanted to go over there and see what I could find. I love going to those flea markets for two reasons. A lot of people go there to get rid of stuff. They're moving out of the area, and I always find those people interesting to talk to. They're around my age group. The second thing with those folks is a lot of times they just want to move stuff. They're not fooling around. They want stuff gone. And this is an example of what I'm talking about. One person, you know, they were selling these bags of stuff between $2 and $5. So he had a bunch of this stuff laid out on his table, and I said, "How much if I take all of them?" So he took all these bags of stuff. I mean, Utica. This is probably Channel, Bonney, right? Who made this? Mac, right? Plus the locks. They seem to have keys, plus the electrical stuff, GFIs, testers, nuts, bolts, screws, wire nuts, solder and flux, all these pens and pencils. I think I mentioned the bits, more bits, and laser levels, and that trivia. Screwdrivers, including Stanley, Xcelite, you know, Fuller. More Xcelite stuff, putty knives, the whole bit. So I said, "How much for all of it?" And he's like, "Give me $15." So I handed him $15, and he like loaded this thing on me. You know, I wheel this around to collect stuff. I mean, interesting crimper. A lot of the stuff American made. I don't know where it came from. The guy who sold me this. He was moving south and he wasn't taking it with him. So I'm like, wow, for $15, I'm sure I got my $15 worth just out of this pile. This was $5, and what it is a portable projector stand. These shelves fold down and you can roll it about if you don't knock it over. I looked at it and I thought to myself, boy, wouldn't that be great? That, like, when I'm working on an all-terrain vehicle, if I could put my tools down on these things and not leave them all over the place. So I thought, you know, for $5 under the let's try to get Harvey organized thing. From the same guy, I bought this thing. This is a snowblower engine. It's a like 3 or 3.5, I don't know, 3.5 horsepower. Briggs & Stratton. It's an electric start, as you see. It's got like 0 miles on it. Look at that muffler. It has compression and all that other stuff, and it was $15. And basically that guy, by the time I got to him, a little time had passed, and he just didn't want to take this stuff home. Lastly was this dolly. It's made out of aluminum. Ouch. Sharp aluminum. And you can see the wheels are metal, so they don't, you know, get flat from sitting with weight on them. Poked a hole there. This was $8. If you're familiar with these wheels, they cost more than $8 each, and to have it all put together ready for you is quite the handy thing. So let me get more stuff out of the truck. So now let's do the expensive stuff. So the Snap-on 1/2-inch hammer with the battery charger, the whole bit. I was told the battery was no good. I gave her $8 for this, and in that case, her husband had passed on, and she was just getting rid of his stuff. I bought this from a guy who said he was a plumber, and, you know, Xcelite, Weller, This is SK, a full 2 set, SAE, you know, tester, no lead solder. I don't know if anybody's bought no lead solder, you know, as you're looking at $30 for most of a roll, that pays for a lot of it. This is one of those handy cut things. I have a couple of these. I really like them. Great for pruning bushes, like right there. One of these screwdrivers, multi-screwdrivers, but it's actually made here. And, you know, whenever possible, I like to buy the American-made tools. These are Craftsman corners. Good for fabrication, obviously. This is a spanner wrench. A couple of better grade Stanley screwdrivers, number 2, flat blade, and number 2, Phillips. And once again, made in the United States. So I gave him 30 for that pile. We already talked about this. This thing is interesting, very old. It's known as a Mega. What you do is, if you have cables next to each other and you're worried about them having leakage between the cables, once again, this is very old. What you do is you hook the 2 cables together, and then you crank the heck out of this thing. And what this thing does is it sends 500 volts down the cables. And then you see what the resistance between the cables would be. There's a little. So basically a 500 volt generator. What's interesting about this is the woman's father gave it to her husband. And it was old when the father gave it to her husband. So it was old like 50 years ago. To me, what is it? It's a handheld generator, good for at least 500 volts. I figured, I gave her $9 for it. I figured something that possibly could go up on eBay, you know, one of those things that might have $50 to $100 value, kind of more an investment than anything else. This is, you know, Craftsman multimeter. I gave her $4 for it. This is one of those 18 volt radios, Ryobi, and it also does MP3 and everything else. I already have one of those that's not very good. I'm hoping this one's better. If not, I could give it to my son for the MP3. This clock, he wanted $10 for it, and it was corroded inside. You know, the battery corroded, so I ended up like giving him $1 for it. These are LED lights, and they're 200 lumen, and they're 18 volts, which means they will run on my Ryobi battery packs. So that could be handy. You guys know I like my construction lights. I gave him 5 for that. This is the spool of copper, you know, for making battery terminals. This is a case of cases. Once again, great for sorting things. I think it's actually meant for crafting or whatever. I bought it because I wanted all the individual cases. So that was all the expensive stuff. What you see here is all the cheap stuff. Like these were less than $1 each. That was $1. These were $1 each. The switch was $1. The guy rigged it up. I mean, how's that? That's worth $1 I paid for it right there, that cable end. But he rigged it up for the Christmas tree lights. $1 for the fuel can, $1 for the fan and the light, $1 for all the sanding discs, $1 for the sharp electric alarm clock, $1 for the blade. I'm not sure, that hole looks a little bigger than is common. That's probably why it was in the dollar bin. It's unused. These were $1 each. When I was a kid, these ceramic light sockets were, you know, kind of hard to get one's hands on, so I picked it up for nostalgia's sake. You know, I like these, right? $1. American made what is it? Somebody. Oxwall, USA. I mean, they're small stamped junk, but a lot of times they come in handy. You can bend them into shape and wiggle them around to whatever you need them to do. These are clamps for holding down a cap on a truck. Buck, GE Light, $1 clamp. I think that was less than $1. The goggles were $1 each. I ended up giving them $1 for the electronic Bible. Frequently handy for when you're in the car driving somewhere and you need a moment of inspiration. You push the button, you see what comes up. These screwdrivers are the kind that, you know, slide out and you got one on each kind. This one, I think, has Honda Motor Corporation, HMC on it. For anybody who finds all-terrain vehicles, a lot of times the screwdriver is missing, so this is good. I'll be able to get those toolkits. Transformer, $1. Obviously, this is for a train set, but a lot of times you can use it to charge batteries. An analog meter for $1. I thought this was a steal for $1. Right, it's one of those, you know, mini world band receivers. It seems to work. The battery's on its way out, so it'll come on and you could get a station for like 3 seconds before the battery lets go, but you can see how dim it is. Right, key assortments. This is a knife sharpener. This is brake cable for the rear, which I'm always using those. And I think that's about it. So you guys could see I did buy some stuff. I tried to get some cool deals, but I also tried not to overstuff, you know, where I work, right? I tried to keep it somewhat reasonable. I mean, interesting thing, like these screwdrivers are really, really nice. They probably would have been considered Stanley Pro back in the day. There's some better stuff. You know, these lights are interesting. They kind of remind me the sockets, particularly when I was a kid. We used to have science fairs back in those days, and you know, people were always kind of rigging things up to show how smart they were using these sockets. When I was a kid growing up in New Jersey, Emerson to be specific, they had this place just outside of Westwood. Maybe it was still in Westwood. It was known as Valley Fair, and they had all this cool stuff in their hardware department. I used to go in as a kid and, you know, bother my parents because I wanted all that stuff. So there we go. Anyway, so that's about it. I want to thank everybody for dropping by to watch and comment and subscribe. Please remember to keep your feet down, your heads up, and get out and enjoy each and every day. Bye now.